Hey friends, welcome to week 8 of our spring art class. Just like the last couple of weeks, if you have your art materials that I left for you at the school, you should have some pastels and some watercolors. We'll be using those again. If you don't have them, crayons or colored pencils will work just fine. Or if you have no materials at all, I understand life happens, you can skip the regular drawing portion and go to where I teach you how to do the entire thing on Seesaw. Remember, if you don't know how to get into Seesaw, talk to me. I will help you. And if you get stuck anywhere along the way, ask your parents to send me a message and I will help you as soon as I can. So, watch the rest of this introduction so you can learn about what we're doing, and then when it gets to the drawing portion where I pull out my Sharpie, you can skip to the end and watch how I create this in Seesaw. Remember, if you need to pause at any point in this video to watch something again, you can do that as many times as you want. Has anyone ever seen something like this? These are called auroras, and they're really cool. I'm going to let somebody who's a little bit better at science explain how they work for you.
The Cree called them the dance of the spirits. In Finland, they said the lights were caused by the firefox running so quickly across the snow that his tail sent sparks into the sky. Ancient Chinese observers believed they were the flames of good and evil dragons battling in the heavens. Even today, these mysterious and unpredictable lights are called aurora, after the Roman goddess of the dawn. An aurora, also known as a polar light, is a display of lights in the sky in the Arctic and Antarctic regions, in an area known as the auroral zone. An aurora around the North Pole is called aurora borealis, or the northern lights. An aurora around the South Pole is called aurora australis, or the southern lights. They are usually greenish in color, but are sometimes blue, violet, pink, or even red. Auroras constantly move and change shape. Sometimes they are so dim they can be mistaken for clouds. Other times they are bright enough to read by. But what causes these amazing lights? Auroras actually begin at the sun, which burns with so much energy that it superheats the gases around it. Tiny particles, or pieces of the sun, are blasted away from it at speeds of over 450 miles, or 750 kilometers per second. This stream of particles is called the solar wind, and the Earth is directly in its path. The solar wind can disrupt satellites and be harmful to astronauts in space. But the Earth is protected because of its magnetic field. The Earth has a molten iron core that rotates quickly, turning it into a giant magnet. The magnetic field around the Earth is called the magnetosphere, and like a magnet, it has a North Pole and a South Pole. Most of the particles from the Sun are deflected by the Earth's magnetosphere, but some make it through to bombard the atmosphere. As these electrically charged particles strike the atmosphere, they excite the oxygen and nitrogen atoms, causing them to light up in the beautiful colors of an aurora. If you want to see an aurora on Earth, you should head to areas near the poles. You may not know that auroras are also visible from space, where they can be seen as rings around the North and South poles. The Earth is not the only planet to have auroras. They have been observed on Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, and Uranus as well. Like the auroras on Earth, auroras on other planets occur around their north and south poles. Shifting curtains of light in the night sky, Auroras have fascinated people for thousands of years. They are a visible reminder of the connection our Earth has to the sun, and one of the most beautiful phenomena in the heavens. I hope you enjoyed learning about auroras today. Goodbye till next time.
Isn't that cool? As artists, let's talk about how we can create some auroras. I know I don't usually care which way you turn your papers, but today the easiest way to do this assignment is if you turn it vertically or straight up and down so that it's tall. Then we can get started. I'm going to use a marker. If you have any kind of marker or dark writing tool, that will work really well for what we're doing today. If you want to sketch with pencil first and then go over it, you can do that too. I'm going to start by finding the middle of my paper, all right? And I'm going to draw an imaginary line with my finger. Now, on the very edge, I'm going to take my writing tool and I'm going to do a little curve that goes up and down. Now, this is just one mountain. I want to make a few more. So I'm going to create a couple more curves. Now that I have all of these different curved lines in the middle of my paper, I am ready to start adding a little bit more in the foreground, which is the part of the paper that's closest to us at the bottom, remember? So you guys can think about how you want to fill this part of your paper. You could put trees if you wanted to. You could put little tufts of grass sticking out of the snow. If you want, you can even add little animals, like maybe a bunny rabbit. Some of my things are going to look big when they're down at the bottom. Obviously, my bunny is not half the size of my tree, but since it's close to us, it looks bigger. If I draw trees that are further away, they're going to look smaller than the one that is close. So the further up on the page I get, the smaller my trees are. Now that I've added most of my design down here, I can start thinking about how I can add some shadows to my mountains. Now, one way is to add some unique lines. So here's what I'm going to do. In the middle of my hill where it goes up, I'm going to do a little curved line coming down. And I'm going to do that in the middle of all of my hills. Now that I have my curved lines coming down in the middle of my hills, I'm going to add some other interesting lines. I can do wavy lines. I can do straight lines. The reason I'm doing it like this instead of shading like I normally would is because sometimes it's good to learn how to do unique shadows if you have a marker. It looks super interesting too. Notice I'm only doing my lines on one side, and I'm doing the same side for all of my mountains. So now it looks like they're a little bit more 3D because there's shadows on one side. Now I'm ready for my auroras. If you have your pastels that I left at the school, these work really well. But if you have crayons or markers or colored pencils, those work just fine too. I'm going to start with a light green. Now with my light green, I'm going to go to the top of one of my mountains. And I'm going to do a curved, wavy line that goes up toward the corner of my paper. Now, did it go straight up for my mountain? No, I want it to look like my auroras are getting closer and closer to us. So I am making it go off at an angle. I'm going to do a couple more of these lines. If you want, you can add different colors of your lines. I think I'm going to use a crayon to do a pink one since I don't have a pink pastel. Maybe some light blue too. Now that I've made my lines, I'm ready to make them look a little bit more like auroras. There's a couple ways we can do this. One way is to take my finger and pull it down so little lines come down. Do you see how the lines are starting to come down? If you don't want to get your finger dirty, you can use a piece of tissue. Make sure you pull it down. Sometimes, if you're doing this, you might have to go back and draw your line again, and that's okay. This doesn't work very well when it's crayon. So if you're using crayons, what you can do instead is you'll take your line and then below it, you'll draw some very faint little lines coming down. I'm going to press hardest on my line, and then just like when we were practicing value, I'm going to press softer and softer the further down I get. I'm going to do the same thing with my light blue pastel because it doesn't seem to be blending very well. If you want, you can go over your lines a couple of times. All right, now that I have my auroras, I'm going to do more of my secret white designs so that I can do some stars. So I'm going to take my white pastel crayon or colored pencil. I'm going to press nice and hard, and I'm going to create some little secret stars that you can't quite see yet. I'm going to make it look like there's only a few down low, but there's a bunch of them up at the top of the paper. Because often when you're looking at the sky, there's a lot more stars above you than right at the horizon. All right, now that I've added my secret white designs, I'm ready to start thinking about my watercolors. If you don't have watercolors, you know the drill. You can use your crayons or whatever writing tools you have to keep coloring the rest of your sky. Remember, when you're filling your cup for your watercolors, make sure you only fill it about halfway, because if it's filled all the way to the top, it's a lot easier to spill it and splash everywhere. Also, try to keep your cup far away from the rest of your art materials. That way, you are not getting your computer or anything else wet. Remember, when it's time to rinse our brush, don't give your brush a bad hair day. That ruins them. Instead, be gentle. Stir it like this. Now, should we stir it like this? No, because paint water gets everywhere. If this was dirty paint water, it would be all over my stuff, all over my artwork, and probably all over my computer, which is not good. Instead, gently stir. Now, if you want to get the extra water off, should you go like this? No, because once again, there's water everywhere, and it made a mess. So instead, if you want to get the extra water off, mix your brush and then gently brush it on the edge of your cup. When you're getting your watercolors ready, make sure you take a drop of your water and put it in each of the colors that you plan to use. I'm probably just going to use black, blue, and purple for my sky. I don't know that I'll use other colors. If you want to use other colors for this project, though, you can. Just like before when we used the wet on wet watercolor, I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to get my paper wet first. That will help my paint to spread a little better. Now that it's wet, I'm going to get some paint and start spreading it in my sky. Notice our secret stars are starting to show up now. If your paint doesn't want to spread, just add a little bit more water. For my big kids, you guys are going to practice making this look even more realistic. And the way you're going to do this is I want you to try to make your sky darker at the top of the page and lighter at the bottom. That's because when you look at the sky, and you guys can do this if you want, go outside, and if you look straight up, the sky is actually a darker blue than it is on the very bottom. So I'm going to go in, add more paint on the top. That's that value again, right? So I want it to look like it's darker up top and lighter on the bottom. You can even go in and add some black if you want your sky to look extra dark up top. Remember though, I want that value. So if it starts looking like it's just a line, add some water and mix it together. I think I'll add a little purple to my sky too, because sometimes the sky is such a dark blue that it almost looks purple. Remember, every time I switch colors, I'm rinsing my brush first. Whoop, I forgot. Gotta rinse my brush. Hopefully clean that paint out a little bit since I mixed it. And get back to what I was doing. So do you guys see how it looks darkest on top and then lighter as we get to the bottom? Hopefully our auroras look even more realistic as they start to dry. Now I'm going to add a few little shadows. Now my snow is mostly white, but often when you see shadows on the snow, they look a little tiny bit blue. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to add some blue shadows on the side where we did our lines. If you want to do purple instead, that's fine too. You could do both. I might do both. Now, of course, our source of light is the stars, but it's also the auroras, right? So, if our source of light is the auroras, we're going to have to add some reflections. And I forgot about this part earlier. If you want, you can try to add reflections with the paint. I'm going to use my pastels for this part. So on the sides where there aren't shadows, I'm just barely going to do some little lines on my hills. That way, it looks like the light from the auroras is reflecting on the snow. I realized I also forgot to add shadows over here on this hill. So I think I'll do that real quick also. You can also go in and add shadows to the rest of your paper. So there's going to be, if the shadows are going this way, I'm going to add a few more under my trees. Ooh, I can also paint this tree, I think. I think I'm going to make the shadow on this side of the tree a little bit blue. So that way it looks like the tree is a little bit more three-dimensional. Here's your objectives. Number 1, I can create the illusion of space by drawing the things that are far away, small and higher up on the page, and drawing the things that are close to me, big and lower down on the page. Number 2, I can create value that goes from dark to light using whatever materials I have chosen to do my artwork. En español, número 1. Yo puedo crear la ilusión de espacio dibujando las cosas que están cerca de mí, grandes, y las cosas que están lejos, pequeños, y más arriba en mi página. Número 2. Yo puedo crear valor que va de oscuro a claro, utilizando cualquier material que haya elegido para mi obra de arte. If you only have crayons, here's how I would do it. I'm going to do those same curved lines going up, just like before. I'll use a green one, a pink one, maybe even a light blue one if you want. And since my green is a lot darker than the normal greens that we see in these auroras, I'm going to mix it with some yellow so it looks a little lighter. Now I'm going to create that value. So we're going to start by pushing extra hard where the line is, and then below it, I'm going to do some little lines coming down, but I'm pressing really, really softly, so I'm barely touching my page. And I'll do that for all of my lines. All right, now if you have a white crayon, you can add stars, or I don't right now, so I'm just going to go in and start coloring my sky. I'm using the side of my crayon because it's a little bit faster. Now, just like with what the students did with paint, we want the top of the sky to look a little darker than the bottom. So I'm going to press extra hard up on the top. see how there's value going from dark to light? You can now go in and add some shadows to your mountains. Friends, so here's how we will do this in Seesaw if you have 0 materials. I'm going to start by creating a background actually. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to press those 3 little dots. I'm going to click background. And I'm going to pick one of my colors. Now, I want one that looks dark on the top and light on the bottom, and there's not too many like that. So I think I'm actually going to click this purple one because it's dark on top and light at the bottom. Now I'm ready to start my mountain. So I'm going to pick one of my tools that you can't see through. So probably this pen will work. And I'm going to turn it white. So let's see if I can get a white there. Oh, it's almost green. There we go. I'll start on this side. Do some hills. All right. So now I'm just going to fill in all of this area so that it's all the same color. All right, now my mountains look a little funny, so I'm going to smooth them out with my tool here. Make them more the shapes that I want them to be. All right, now I will change the color of my tool to something dark, almost black. I think I'm going to do a really dark blue. And I'm going to make it much smaller. Now I'm ready to start adding my lines. So you don't have to outline them, but I want to outline my mountains so that they look similar to the ones that I drew on my paper. This part is kind of challenging. Don't worry if you can't do it. I kind of left some of the little marks on one side. You guys see that? All right, so now, of course, we figure out where our shadows are. So I'm going to do a wiggly line down from the top of my mountain. Wiggly line down. And a wiggly line down. Notice all of my lines go in the same direction. And now I'm ready to start adding my little line patterns. So you can do wavy lines. You can do straight lines, if we can get them straight in Seesaw. I don't know, but we can try, right? And I think I'm going to do some zigzag lines for this one. Now we have a few different lines. All right, now I'm ready to add some of those things in the foreground. So I'm going to change, get a little darker. Maybe I'll do a big tree right in front. I'll make my tool a little bit bigger. This one will go off the page. I don't think we'll even be able to see the bottom of this tree. I can put some of the trees a little bit smaller, further away. Remember, the higher up and the smaller they are, the further away they are. I think now I'm ready to start working on that sky. So for our auroras, I'm going to pick a super lime green. And you know what? Since we're doing value, I'm going to switch to my highlighter tool. So I'll switch to the highlighter tool, go to that lime green. We're going to start, so just like before, I'm going to start at the line where the mountains are, and then I'm going to do a curved line going up. Now, of course, since it's translucent, I'm still clicking. I'm not letting go. I'm coloring it back. All right. All right, making it a little bit bigger at the top. Now I let go. All right, now I can click again. And of course, this part's a little lighter, right? And then I'm going to make my tool a little bit smaller. Click it again. That way it's a little lighter. And if you want, let's see if this works. We can make some of the little, I'm not sure if I like that. That's all right. I think I'll undo those ones because I don't think I'm crazy about them. So we'll click this back button to get rid of those lines. If you want to put them, you can. I think I'm going to go without. I'm going to do this for a couple of other colors. So I'll do the pink, make it nice and big. Maybe I'll do this one first. All right, so now that I've done my auroras and they look like they go from dark to light, I'm going to start working on my stars. So I'm going to click on this little sparkly guy, pick the white. I will start doing some stars. I think those need to be a little bit smaller. There we go. Once again, I'm going to put more stars up top and fewer of them down at the bottom. So now I am just ready to wrap up. So I can go, I'm going to grab that highlighter tool and start adding some little blue shadows to my tree. If you want, you can add some little tiny highlights. All right, so there it is. That's how I would create this picture in Seesaw. Here's your objectives. Number 1, I can create the illusion of space by drawing the things that are far away, small and higher up on the page, and drawing the things that are close to me, big and lower down on the page. Number 2, I can create value that goes from dark to light using whatever materials I have chosen to do my artwork. En español, número 1. Yo puedo crear la ilusión de espacio dibujando las cosas que están cerca de mí, grandes, y las cosas que están lejos, pequeños, y más arriba en mi página. Número 2. Yo puedo crear valor que va de oscuro a claro, utilizando cualquier material que haya elegido para mi obra de arte.